What did Moses get wrong? After Moses killed the Egyptian, it seems as though Moses is left with more questions than answers. This happens because the grounds and the timing of his decision to kill the Egyptian were all wrong. So God didn't allow Moses' plan to work. Hence why Moses is seen with more questions than answers. This is called in the Bible leaning to your own understanding. And when you lean to your own understanding, more often than not, you're left with more questions than answers. One failure after another, and we could think that we're changing the environment for the better, ultimately viewing our failures as progressional steps. But in actuality, failure is more like the Egyptian who died, in the sense that every failure could result in another person hurt or another person lost due to poor decision making. Failure in this sense can be viewed as a way to occupy your time for those who feel they can't wait on God to change the landscape of their life. And yes, this applies to believers and non-believers. Look, I get it. You may have learned so much from your previous failure, but the key takeaway from most failure is how something you wanted wasn't intended for you. And let's face it, you could have learned that lesson by reading the Word of God. It's only when you face the wall of impossibility that we're forced to settle down and submit ourselves to the life God prescribed for us. And it's only then that we begin to see life for its intended purpose instead of mere personal gains. So it's not that Moses was missing some key contributing characteristic to leadership, but Moses wasn't conscious of his leadership ability. And it wasn't until he submitted himself to the life God gave him that God appeared to him, even granting him the opportunity to be the mouthpiece for such a great cause. So why does it seem as though Moses is questioning God's course of action intended for him? Well, Moses identified with his past failures and inadequacies, which is just another reason why it's so important for us to wait on God to truly bless us. Now, are you asking for a blessing from God, or are you asking for God's help? Why does that matter? Because help is often associated with an immediate response, contrary to a blessing which requires time for a complete transformation to be made. It's possible to confuse the two and expect a rapid response for a request that requires more time to materialize. For example, I'm in need of rescue from a dangerous situation. God can dispatch angels to come to your aid. A blessing, on the other hand, is God's favor as well as his protection in your life. So a question you may want to ask yourself is, do you want God's involvement in your daily life? We've read about the prosperity and protection associated with God's presence, but it does require a shift towards serving God and obeying his word. So when you're praying, ensure you're making the distinction between asking God's favor to be in your life versus needing his help with a situational problem, because response time does differ. Have you gotten a response from God that you weren't prepared for? An example of this is when you pray for life with less drama. As you speak to your friends about the newfound love of God, you find that your friends no longer want to hang out with you the way that they used to. So you have less drama, but at the same time, you consider your life boring. Soon after this, you slip into depression. Why didn't you receive your happy ending? Because you asked for something you weren't ready to receive.